Hey everybody, it's Ron and Ellie back with this week's edition of Ask Ron. First up this week is Ted Peterson from Connecticut.
Hey Ted.
He says, Ron, I have a free and clear deal sold with owner financing to me that I will be putting under contract soon.
Okay.
I've just learned that there is a tenant renting the house currently and I'm not sure how to proceed. What do you recommend I do?
All right, well, Ted, I assume that, I can't tell by your question whether your intent is to go ahead and buy it right now because you're getting a little or no down payment and you like the monthly payment. If that's the case, you might want to go ahead and close on it. And then it's just a matter of either selling it to the tenant buyer or waiting till their time is up and then selling it. Or in fact, if they don't have a lease on it, you literally could make them move and then sell it. My first objective, of course, would be to turn them into a buyer if they have interest and get some down payment money out of them. And immediately put all the repair responsibility on them while they're waiting to close. I have to assume that your rent is going to cover your outgoing payment, since I don't know based on your question. But if your intent is not to go ahead and buy it because you're putting up more of a down payment than you would like to, there really isn't much you can do with it until the tenant moves out of it, because you can't even put it on the market till they do to collect the down payment so that you can go ahead and close on it. So you have to write that into the contract if that's the case. So I don't know what else to tell you there. I hope that answers your question. If I had more information, I could probably answer it more definitively.
Ted, give us some more information. We'll cover it next week. For now, next up is Lou Pimentel from Massachusetts.
Hey Lou.
Lou says, we're new to investing and have probably made a few mistakes.
No way, Lou. No way. I've never made any, man.
It says, we purchased an REO single-family house with cash.
That's my wife probably calling me. All right, go ahead.
So we purchased an REO single-family house with cash for $72,000 and renovated it for $50,000.
Okay, so we got 122 in it.
And it's appraised at $172,000.
All right.
We listed it with a realtor for $185 and had an offer for $175.
Yeah.
After paying the realtor's commission, we're looking at about a $33,000 profit. With that being said, is there anything that we should do differently for our next deal?
I don't know. What's wrong with $33,000? That's not a bad profit for sure, especially if the realtor sold it for you and you don't have to go through that process. I'd go ahead and take it as me. The next time you might want to get a little bit better buying, trying to get a little bit more spread in it. But again, why don't you just go do $8, $10, $12, $33,000 deals a year and don't worry about it. That's pretty good for rehabbing. I prefer you do $50,000, and the only way you're going to do that is to buy them cheaper, because if you can't sell them more than the market's going to pay. You can't rehab them for less than what it's going to cost. So the only other choice is to buy it cheaper and get a bigger spread. But again, I'd way rather see you make the 33 than to spend all your time trying to make 50 or 60 and lose the 33 deals.
Okay, next up is Eddie Talley from Michigan.
Hey Eddie.
Eddie says, I found a home that's been empty for over a year.
That's not hard today.
The current deed says the home has been placed into trust, but how would I go about finding the person to which I should make the offer? You
wouldn't. You have to write a letter to the house and put on the envelope, please forward to this, and hopefully it gets to the owner, unless the address of the trust is on public record, which is, I'm sure it is. So I would send a letter to that address. Sure, but there's no way you're going to find out who the beneficial interest is of that trust. That's why trust exists, man, for total privacy. So all you can do is try to track down the current address and send a letter to them and hope they respond.
Okay, next up is Martin Bale from Idaho.
Hey Martin.
Martin says, is there anything we need to watch out for if we buy a free and clear house at little or no interest and resell on terms at a higher interest rate?
Well, yeah, Martin, I hope you got my new terms course from that we released last week. Yeah, I really hope you got that. If you didn't, you better get a call in here, because I don't think I'd want to do what you just described without some training on it. There's a whole lot of things, actually. One thing you want to make sure of is that you get a personal guarantee from your buyer, and that you find out for sure that your buyer has the ability to pay once you put them in the house. We use screenthetenant.com. Our friend Paul Ritter gets us a nice package on them, making sure they can afford it and making sure we know what we're dealing with. You need a due on sale clause in your mortgage, and you need a late penalty in there. And you know, those are just a list of the few things, but If you have an attorney, which I hope you do, your attorney should help guide you on how to protect yourself on that deal as well. Just make sure you get the personal guarantee is the big one.
Okay, next up is Jermon Claiborne from Georgia.
Hey Jermon, at least you're getting down here where it's a little warmer.
He says, I talked with the seller who's open to doing either lease purchase or owner financing.
Right.
The question he asked was how much of Tenant's monthly payment will go towards the rent and the principal debt. To which I replied, since an existing mortgage is in place already, their payment structure will remain the same as yours. Did I misinform the seller?
I don't even know if I understand the question, Jermon, but here's the deal. If I'm lease optioning it, in fact, just before I started filming this, I sat here filling out a lease option agreement on the deal that I negotiated yesterday here. And my purchase price is going to be $180,000, the loan balance at the time of purchase plus X number of dollars. Therefore, I'll get the benefit of the debt pay down. However, I fully intend to stay in this thing on a sandwich lease. Therefore, I want the benefit of the debt pay down. If I didn't care and I knew I was going to get out of it, I'd probably just lock in the purchase price, transfer that over to my buyer and be done with it and get a check. Today, though, I stay in all of them. I don't assign anything, even if I'm not making any monthly cash flow, so I'm going to write it up so I get the benefit of the debt pay down. Now, I don't know whether that answers your question or not, but you do have to be careful about what comes out of your mouth when you're talking to the seller. If the seller asks you how much of the rent goes toward the debt, just tell them none. I'm gonna pay the rent. I'm not asking you for any credit at all because I will be receiving the benefit of the debt pay down that I'm paying down. So you're going to get X number of dollars worth of cash when I cash you out.
Okay, last up this week is Marianne Nunez, your favorite Californian.
Marianne.
She says, before we get into the questions, she says she finally filled her rental property and received $12,000 down.
No way.
$400 cash flow every month for a 2-year lease. All
no way.
You, Ron.
I want proof, Marianne. I don't believe it. I think you're making it up.
Send us a check, Marianne.
Send us a testimonial letter, Marianne.
First question says, if the tenant needs more than 2 years to get a loan, do I have an attorney add an addendum to the original agreement for an extra year or something else?
Marianne, you're working too hard, girl. Golly. If you put them in there on a lease option term for 2 years, it's up to you what you do in 2 years. You have total control. They have none. So quit worrying about it. If they haven't got a loan in 2 years, then you decide if you want to leave them in there and extend it, and if you do, you ought to get more money out of them. Make that decision then. You don't have to deal with it now.
Okay, the second question says, in an owner financing deal, who makes the monthly payments if the buyer leaves halfway through the deal?
You do. You do.
Simple enough?
So when you collect money from the down payment, you ought to set a sum aside for a thing when things go wrong. This is a business. In business, things go wrong. Prepare for them, and you'll be so proud of yourself when it doesn't bother you when they do go wrong. In fact, sometimes you even sit around and hope for something to go wrong. I'm prepared. But I'm just kidding on that. You don't want everybody to move out, but remember, you're going to get a bunch of money when they move in, and you're going to get a bunch more money when you replace the tenant that moved out. But if you have to make a payment or two in the middle, you should be asking yourself, okay, how am I going to handle that if and when it comes up?
Okay, her last question for the week says, you've said you don't have to tell the seller how much you made from the buyer when you assign the agreement back to the seller.
If I'm assigning an agreement back to the seller, they're going to find out. They have to find out because you're assigning your agreement that shows their down payment to you back to the seller. They're going to know. Absolutely. The only time the seller doesn't know is when I stay in the middle till the end on a sandwich. I collect, I pay them. They don't need to know what I collected down.
Okay, I think that'll answer your question, and that's all we have for you this week, Ron.
All right, guys. Hey, for all of you who purchased my new terms course last week, or can still do it actually if you get on the ball, because we're going to shut it down here in a few hours. I'm doing a Q&A thing on the 19th. On the 19th from 1 to 4 p.m. I'm going to be on an open line where you can call in and get your questions answered. And I mean any questions. Now this is not a 3-hour seminar. I'm just going to sit there for 3 hours and take one after another and answer your questions. You can hang on there as long as you want or leave anytime you want. And we'll see how that goes. I might do that again if you guys participate. So if you want to do it, participate, and I'll keep doing it. That applies only to buyers of my terms course and or my quick start event. Right now, if you haven't bought yet, you still can and get a good deal. Because I gave everybody $300 off this brand new system. Plus I gave them my Big Chunks course, which is worth $1,000 as a bonus. Plus I gave them a $1,000 rebate certificate. If they go out and do a deal in 90 days, I'll send them a check for $1,000 for crying out loud. So you can get this thing almost free. But if you want it at this price, you're going to have to hurry. Call 800-567-6128. Call 800-567-6128 or go to orderterms.com. Orderterms.com. When you call in my office, tell them I'm calling because I'm a procrastinator and Ron told me to call at the last minute before the deal closes down. See you next week.